Back in 1898, there was a department store owner in Paris named Ernest Cognac, and he figured something out that I think about a lot. His customers weren't broke. They just never wanted to save because he'd built an entire building to make sure of it. Nice lighting, layouts that walked you past stuff you didn't come in for, credit accounts so you could buy the thing now and feel it later. He didn't invent any of this, he just scaled it up. And honestly, the machine he built is basically still running. It just doesn't need a building anymore. It's in your phone now, and it's aimed with scary precision at people who make just enough money to hurt themselves with it. Here's the pattern I keep seeing. Guy makes $45,000, feels broke. Raised to $75,000, still feels broke. Promotion to $120,000, buys a bigger house, still has $400 in the bank. That's not bad luck. It's a mechanism, and once you notice it, you kind of can't stop noticing it, which is annoying, honestly. I'm Alex, and I spend way too much time reading Federal Reserve consumer finance surveys, which is either the most boring hobby a person can have or the only one that actually explains why people making six figures still panic when the car breaks down. If you've ever looked at your paycheck and thought, wait, where did it go? This is for you. I want to get into why lifestyle creep isn't really a willpower thing. It just looks like one. Which income bracket gets hit hardest by it, and it's not who you'd guess. And why two people on the exact same salary can end up $2 million apart by retirement using nothing but timing. This isn't a budgeting lecture. It's about the setup you're operating inside without really noticing. Quick aside, I made a free calculator that shows your real savings rate next to what you think it is. Most people are way off and don't know it. It's linked below, just needs an email. Think of your income like a hose filling a bucket that's got a hole in the bottom. Most people spend their whole career trying to crank up the water pressure, get promoted, switch jobs, ask for the raise. Nothing wrong with that. More pressure does fill the bucket faster, but if the hole grows every time the pressure does, you can open that faucet all the way and the water level just sits there. That hole has a name, lifestyle creep. And it's not random, it scales with you. As income goes up, spending goes up right alongside it, almost dollar for most people. Not because anyone's careless, because the whole economy around you is built to widen that hole exactly as fast as you open the tap. Let's put actual numbers on it. A household making $50,000 usually saves something like 2 to 5%, if that. Bump it to $100,000, and you'd think the savings rate would take off, right? Double the income should mean way more than double the savings. Nope. Fed data shows middle-income households often still save under 10% even there. The $50,000 apartment turns into the $100,000 starter home. The used sedan turns into the financed SUV. 2 vacations a year turns into 4. Every single step up feels buying in the moment because you can technically cover the payment. Nobody goes broke or gets rich off one decision. It's 100 small ones pointed the same direction. And here's the annoying part. The trap is worst right in the middle, not at the bottom, not at the top. Someone making $35,000 barely has room to inflate anything. Rent and groceries already eat most of it. Someone making $500,000 usually hits a ceiling. There's only so much house before the extra dollar has nowhere to go but into investments. But someone in the $90,000 to $200,000 range, basically the American middle to upper middle class, has just enough slack to keep inflating forever without ever hitting a wall that forces money into savings. That bracket is the sweet spot for the trap. It's not built for poor people. They can't afford to fall into it. It's built for people who make just enough to feel safe upgrading everything. Then there's a second thing, and it's sneakier. Bracket confusion. Guy gets a raise from $80,000 to $95,000. In his head, that's $15,000 more, so he mentally budgets a nicer car payment off the full number. What he's not accounting for is federal tax, state tax, payroll tax, and the slice of that raise that just landed in a higher bracket. So his real take-home bump is closer to $9,000. He's financing a lifestyle off the gross number while his bank account only ever sees net, which is probably part of why raises so rarely feel like they change anything. Third thing, and this one does the most damage honestly, is debt marketed as intelligence. Somewhere along the way, good debt became a phrase people say with a straight face and zero math behind it. 0% financing on a car. leveraging a mortgage instead of just paying it down, a home equity line for a kitchen remodel because it'll add value. Any one of these you can defend on its own. Stack them across a whole household, and they become the scaffolding that makes lifestyle creep possible in the first place. You can't inflate your spending on cash you don't have. You absolutely can on debt someone convinced you was smart. Take 0% financing specifically because nobody actually reads the fine print here. Dealership offers 0% for 60 months on a $45,000 truck. Feels free. It's not. That offer's baked into the price, dealers give worse trade-in values and fewer discounts when you take the promo financing, and studies on dealer incentives have found the effective price is often several thousand higher than what a cash buyer negotiates. So you didn't get free money, you got a worse deal spread over 5 years, so the pain per month basically disappears. That's $750 a month gone quietly, dressed up as a discount. Now stack that across every big purchase a household makes over 10 years. Financed furniture, the buy now pay later button at checkout. A home equity line people start treating like a second paycheck instead of a loan against their own house. None of it individually ruins anyone, and that's kind of the point. It was never designed to be one bad decision. It's 100 forgettable ones, all quietly pulling in the same direction, away from investing and toward monthly payments that eat the raise before it ever gets a chance to compound. Let me tell you about a guy I know, an engineer, call him Mark. Starts at $65,000 out of college, 2 roommates, 10-year-old Corolla, complains constantly about being broke. 5 years later, he's at $130,000, income literally doubled. You'd expect him to be saving a fortune. Instead, he's got a $2,800 mortgage on a house that made sense at the time, a $650 payment on a truck he drives 9 miles to an office, and a stack of subscriptions he's never once looked at. His savings rate at $130,000 as a percentage is basically identical to what it was at $65,000. He told me, and I'm quoting him here, "I don't know where it goes, it just goes." It goes exactly where the system's built to send it, into the gap between what he earns and what he's been talked into thinking he needs. And that gap grows on its own every time his paycheck does. Compare that to his coworker Priya. Same starting salary, same 5 years, same jump to $130,000. Only difference. Every raise, she moved half of it straight into an automated investment account before it ever touched her checking, and let her actual life catch up slowly on the other half. First raise, $65,000 to $78,000. She auto-invested $6,500 of that $13,000 bump and just lived with the rest. Same move on the next raise. By the time she hit $130,000, she wasn't fighting a budget spreadsheet every month. She genuinely never saw the money, so she never missed it. Apartment got a little nicer, car stayed practical, vacations got slightly better. None of it felt like deprivation because none of it took willpower in the moment. The decision was already made months earlier, the second the raise landed. Same income path as Mark. Completely different outcome. By year 5, Mark's got about $20,000 saved, mostly sitting in checking, earning basically nothing, plus $38,000 in truck payments and mortgage-adjacent debt he's not really tracking. Priya's got over $140,000 invested and growing, totally separate from her month-to-month spending. The gap here isn't income. It's the order things happen in: save first and spend the leftovers versus spend first and save whatever's left, which for most people ends up being nothing. Run that forward 25 years at a conservative 7% return. Priya's $140,000 head start, untouched, grows to roughly $760,000 on its own before she adds another dollar. Mark, starting from close to zero at year 5, now has to somehow find and sustain a much higher savings rate for the rest of his working life, just to end up where Priya lands on autopilot. Same job, same raises, same starting salary. One 5-year habit created a gap that decades of working harder might not close. Now flip it, because this isn't only a rich people problem. Denise teaches public school, makes $58,000. On paper, she has the least room of anyone here to build any wealth at all. She's on track to retire with more than most of her friends who earn double her salary. And it comes down to one thing. She treated her starting lifestyle as permanent instead of a stage she'd graduate out of. When she got a $4,000 raise, she didn't upgrade her apartment. She bumped her retirement contribution by the same $4,000, same week the raise hit. She's still driving a car she bought used 8 years ago. Her friends joke about it. She doesn't mind because she knows exactly what that joke is worth. About $9,000 a year in payments she isn't making, invested instead. At 7% over 30 years, $9,000 a year turns into just under $900,000. That's not a budgeting hack. That's one decision held for 30 years. So why is this so hard to fight? Part of it's hedonic adaptation. People adjust to a new standard of living fast, usually within months, and that new standard becomes invisible. It just becomes normal. The bigger house doesn't make you happier for long, it just resets what normal costs to maintain. And once something's normal, losing it feels like falling backward, even though a year earlier you were completely fine without it. There's also a social piece nobody likes admitting: reference group creep. At $50,000, you compare yourself to people making $50,000. At $150,000, your circle quietly shifts: coworkers, new neighbors, other parents at a nicer school, and your sense of normal spending shifts right with it. You're not competing with your old life anymore. You're competing with people whose actual finances you can't see, just the surface, not their debt, not their real savings rate, not the fact that half of them are stuck in the exact same trap, just with better landscaping. This isn't new, and it's not even American. An economist named James Dusenberry noticed it back in 1949, studying post-war households, that people's spending tracks the income of the people around them way more than it tracks their own income in isolation. Savings rates weren't predicted well by absolute income at all. They tracked relative income, where a household sat compared to its neighbors. An $80,000 household surrounded by $60,000 neighbors saved comfortably. The same $80,000 household, surrounded by $120,000 neighbors, felt broke and spent like it. Identical bank balance both times. 75 years later, the mechanism's the same. It's just faster now because you don't need to live next door to see what your reference group is buying anymore. You see it 40 times a day on your phone, curated to look effortless, financing and second mortgage conveniently cropped out of frame. Which explains something raw income numbers can't. Two households on identical salaries in different neighborhoods or friend groups end up with wildly different savings rates. Not because one person's more disciplined, because their brains are running a comparison they never signed up for and mostly don't notice is even running. You didn't decide you wanted a bigger kitchen. Your brain decided the second it clocked that the people you measure yourself against had one. So what actually fixes this? Not motivation, structure. 1. Automate your savings rate to move before your lifestyle does. Every raise or bonus gets split at the source before it ever touches checking, at least half straight into investments. You never get the chance to mentally spend money you didn't see. Do it the same week the raise gets confirmed before the first bigger paycheck even lands. 2. Actually calculate your real savings rate every quarter. Dollars saved divided by net income, off your statements, not your memory. Memory's where lifestyle creep hides best. Nobody remembers 14 tiny subscription bumps and one big financed purchase as a pattern. They just remember each one as a reasonable one-off. 3. Put a 1-year rule on any big lifestyle upgrade: new car, bigger house, major renovation. Write it down, wait a year, and if you still want it and the math still works, get it. Most things that feel urgent right now stop feeling urgent after 12 months, which tells you they were never really about the thing itself. 4. Treat any promotional financing offer, 0%, buy now, pay later, deferred interest as a price increase until proven otherwise. Ask what the cash price would be instead. If they won't give you a straight answer, assume that's exactly where the real cost is hiding. 5. Audit your reference group once a year on purpose. Whose spending have you been quietly measuring yourself against, and how much do you actually know about their finances versus their highlight reel? You can't fully turn the comparison instinct off. It's wired in too deep. But you can pick who you're comparing yourself to, and that alone resets what feels normal to spend. Here's the reframe that actually matters. Wealth isn't the size of your paycheck. It's the size of the gap between your paycheck and your spending and what you do with that gap for decades. A doctor making $300,000 who spends $290,000 is worse off than a teacher making $60,000 who invests $15,000 every single year without fail. Income sets the ceiling. Behavior decides whether you ever get anywhere near it. The middle class doesn't stay stuck because the paycheck's too small. It stays stuck because the system, and honestly, their own wiring, are both built to keep that gap from ever opening wide enough to matter. Quick recap. Lifestyle creep isn't a personal failing. It's a pretty predictable response to rising income. So fight it with automation instead of willpower, because willpower gets tired and automation doesn't. The danger zone isn't broke or rich. It's the comfortable middle, where there's just enough slack to keep inflating without ever hitting a forced ceiling. And track your real savings rate, not the one you assume you have, because that gap between the two is where most people's future quietly leaks out. The people who actually get out of the middle-class trap aren't usually the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who noticed the hole in the bucket and patched it before turning up the pressure any further. If you want to see how I actually structure my own raises and bonuses, there's a video on the channel with my real numbers, no hand-waving. Thanks for watching.